My name is Cassandra. I am 31 years old and I live in Seattle. The voicemail came at 6:12 on a Sunday morning. I was already awake. I had been awake since 4, reviewing quarterly projections for my company. My phone lit up on the nightstand. I saw the name. Mom. She hadn't called me in 14 months. Not on my birthday. Not on Christmas. Not when I was hospitalized for exhaustion last spring. 14 months of nothing. I let it go to voicemail. I listened to it once. Her voice was sweet. Too sweet. Like syrup poured over something rotten. Cassie, baby. It's Mom. Your father and I are having a little family brunch today at the house. Nothing fancy. Just everyone getting together. We miss you so much, sweetheart. Please come. 11 o'clock. Bring your appetite. She laughed at the end. That fake little laugh she does when she wants something. I knew exactly why she was calling. 3 days ago, Bloomberg published a profile on me. My biotech startup had just closed a $78 million Series C round. We had developed a diagnostic platform that could detect ovarian cancer 2 years earlier than any existing test. The article had my picture. It had the number. $78 million. That number changed everything. Suddenly, Mom had time to call. Suddenly, I existed again. I played the voicemail one more time. I closed my eyes. I thought about the last time I heard that voice say something real. I couldn't remember. But before I tell you what happened at that brunch, go ahead and like this video and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment. Where are you watching from? Let me take you back. Let me show you why that voicemail made my blood turn cold. 3 years ago, I had the best night of my life. My company had just been accepted into the most prestigious biotech accelerator in the country. Out of 4,000 applicants, we were one of 12. It meant lab space. It meant mentorship from Nobel laureates. It meant I wasn't crazy for dropping out of my PhD to chase this idea. I wanted to celebrate with my family. That's all I wanted. Not a parade, not a trophy, just my family sitting around a table, saying they were happy for me. I drove 2 hours to my parents' house in Portland. I brought champagne. I brought my mother's favorite cake from the Italian bakery she loves, the one with the pistachio cream. I had called ahead. Mom, I have amazing news. Can we do dinner Friday? I'm driving down. She said yes. She sounded distracted, but she said yes. I arrived at 6 p.m. The house was dark. The driveway was empty. I sat on the porch for 20 minutes. I called Mom. No answer. I called Dad. No answer. I called my older sister, Morgan. She picked up on the 3rd ring. I could hear music in the background. Loud bass. People laughing. Hey, Cassie, what's up? She said. She sounded annoyed, like I was interrupting something important. I'm at Mom and Dad's, I said. We were supposed to have dinner. Where is everyone? Oh, Morgan said. There was a pause. Didn't Mom tell you? We're at Bryce's thing. Bryce is my younger brother. He is 27. He has never held a job longer than 4 months. That week, he had decided he was going to be a DJ. Not just any DJ. A famous DJ. He had bought $15,000 worth of equipment on Dad's credit card and was throwing a launch party at a rented warehouse downtown. We're all here, Morgan said. It's actually pretty fun. Bryce is really talented. I could hear my mother in the background shouting something about the light show. She sounded thrilled. She sounded alive. She sounded the way I wished she sounded when I told her about the accelerator. But I drove 2 hours, I said. My voice cracked. I hated that it cracked. I told Mom I was coming. I mean, you can come here if you want, Morgan said. She didn't sound like she meant it. But it's kind of Bryce's night, you know? We don't want to take away from his moment. His moment. Bryce pressing play on a laptop was a moment. My acceptance into an elite program that could save lives was not. Okay, I said. Have fun. I hung up. I sat on that porch in the dark. The champagne was getting warm. The pistachio cake sat on my lap. I ate a slice alone. It tasted like nothing. That wasn't the beginning. The pattern started long before that. When I was 13, I won a national essay contest. The prize ceremony was in Washington, D.C. I had to fly there alone because my parents said they couldn't afford 2 more plane tickets. The next week, they took Bryce to Disney World for his birthday. When I graduated summa cum laude from college, my father spent the entire ceremony on his phone. Afterward, he said, "Good, now go find a real job. Science doesn't pay." He said this while writing a check to cover Morgan's credit card debt. Morgan had maxed out 3 cards buying designer handbags. Dad called it helping her through a rough patch. When I told my parents I was starting a company, my mother physically laughed. She put her hand over her mouth, but she laughed. "Cassie, honey," she said. "You're smart, but you're not a businesswoman. You're a lab rat. Why don't you go back to school and finish your degree?" Dr. Cassandra. "That sounds nice." I asked my father for a $10,000 investment. Just seed money to file the patent. He said no. He said biotech was a scam and he wasn't going to flush money down the toilet. 6 months later, he co-signed a $60,000 loan for Morgan to open a boutique that sold handmade candles. The boutique closed in 5 months. Nobody ever mentioned the $60,000 again. So when that voicemail arrived on a Sunday morning, 14 months after the last time anyone in my family acknowledged my existence, I knew exactly what was happening. They smelled the money. They saw the Bloomberg article. They did the math. And now, suddenly, I was family again. I had a choice. I could ignore the voicemail. I could block the number and go back to my projections. That would have been the healthy thing. The therapist-approved thing. But I didn't want healthy. I wanted answers. And honestly, I wanted to see their faces. I called Priya, my general counsel. Priya is the smartest person I know. She has a photographic memory and she's afraid of absolutely nothing. "I need you to pull every public record on Richard and Diane Alderman," I said. "Property, liens, debts, court filings, everything." "Your parents?" she asked. "Yes." "Give me 2 hours." I hung up. I went to my closet. I looked at the rows of clothes. Tailored blazers, silk dresses, Italian leather boots. I could walk into that brunch looking like $78 million. I could drip success. I reached for a gray cashmere sweater. Then I stopped. I pulled my hand back. No. I opened the back of my closet. I found an old pair of jeans with a small hole near the knee. A plain white t-shirt. A worn denim jacket I had owned since college. I put them on. I looked in the mirror. I looked like the Cassie they remembered. Broke, struggling, harmless. I pulled my hair into a ponytail. No makeup. No jewelry except for a cheap watch with a scratched face. I drove to the garage. I own a Tesla Model S. It's black and silent and beautiful. I walked past it. In the corner sat my old Honda Civic. It had 140,000 miles on it. The passenger side mirror was held on with duct tape. I hadn't driven it in months, but I kept it because it reminded me of where I started. I turned the key. The engine groaned to life. The check engine light blinked on immediately, like an old friend waving hello. I smiled. Perfect. The drive to Portland took 2 hours and 15 minutes. My phone buzzed halfway there. It was Priya. "You're going to want to sit down," she said. "I'm driving." "Then pull over." I pulled into a gas station parking lot. Priya walked me through what she had found. My father's construction company, Alderman and Sons, was drowning. They had lost 3 major contracts in the last 2 years. They owed $1.8 million to a private lender in Nevada. The interest rate was 22%. The house, the one I grew up in, had a second mortgage. The equity was gone. My father had used it to prop up the company. Morgan's name was on a separate $400,000 line of credit that was 90 days delinquent. She had co-signed it with Dad for a property deal that had fallen through. Bryce owed $85,000 in personal debt. Credit cards, a car loan for a BMW he couldn't afford, and the DJ equipment. They were all underwater. Every single one of them. "There's more," Priya said. "The Nevada lender filed a collection notice last month. If your father doesn't pay $1.8 million by the end of next month, they seize the company assets. The equipment, the vehicles, the warehouse, everything." I sat in the parking lot. I stared at the cracked windshield of my Honda. "Priya," I said, "I want you to contact that Nevada lender. Find out if they'll sell the note. You want to buy your father's debt? I want to own it." There was a long pause. "I'll make the call," she said. I pulled back onto the highway. My hands were steady. My heart was slow. I wasn't the girl on the porch anymore. I wasn't the girl eating pistachio cake alone in the dark. I was someone else now, and they had no idea. I arrived at my parents' house at 11:05. The neighborhood looked the same. Big houses with green lawns and American flags. My parents' house was the nicest on the block. From the outside, it looked like wealth. White columns, a wraparound porch, a fountain in the front yard with a stone angel spitting water. But I knew the truth now. The angel was spitting borrowed water. I parked my Honda on the street. Next to the curb was Morgan's white Range Rover. Behind it was Bryce's BMW. In the driveway sat my father's black Escalade, freshly waxed. My car looked like a stain next to theirs. I walked up to the front door. Before I could knock, it flew open. My mother was standing there in a floral dress, arms spread wide, smile stretched so tight it looked painful. "Cassie!" she shrieked. She grabbed me and pulled me into a hug. She smelled like Chanel. Her arms squeezed me hard, the way you squeeze something you're trying to keep from escaping. "Oh my God, look at you. You look so thin. Are you eating? Come in, everyone's here. We've been waiting for you." She said waiting for you like they had been waiting for years, not just since they read Bloomberg. I stepped inside. The house smelled like bacon and fresh flowers. The dining room table was set with the good china. There were cloth napkins folded into little swans. She was performing. This was theater. My father was sitting at the head of the table. He stood when I walked in. He looked older than I remembered. Thinner. There were dark circles under his eyes that his reading glasses couldn't hide. "There's my girl," he said. He walked over and put his hand on my shoulder. He squeezed. It was supposed to feel fatherly. It felt like a grip. "Glad you could make it, Cassie." Morgan was sitting at the table scrolling through her phone. She looked up and gave me a quick smile. "Hey, sis. Love the jacket. Very vintage." It was an insult wrapped in a compliment. She was wearing a silk blouse that probably cost $800. "Thanks," I said. "It's comfortable." Bryce was already eating. He had a plate piled with eggs and pancakes. He waved his fork at me. "Yo, Cassie. Long time." "Long time," I agreed. We sat down. Mom served the food. She had made everything from scratch. Eggs Benedict, fresh fruit, homemade scones. She never cooked like this. Not for me. When I lived at home, breakfast was cereal from a box and a reminder to stay out of the way. Now she was Julia Child. "Eat, eat," she kept saying. She piled food on my plate. She poured me orange juice. She touched my arm every 30 seconds. The performance was exhausting to watch. They made small talk. Dad complained about the city council. Morgan talked about a new wellness brand she was consulting for. Bryce mentioned he was pivoting from DJing to crypto. Nobody asked about my company. Nobody mentioned the Bloomberg article. Nobody said congratulations. They were saving it. They were warming me up first, buttering the bread before the bite. I decided to speed things up. I put my fork down. "So," I said, "what's the occasion?" "You said it was important." The energy shifted. Mom stopped chewing. Dad set down his coffee cup slowly, deliberately. Morgan put her phone face down. Even Bryce looked up from his plate. "Well," Dad said. He leaned back in his chair. He folded his hands. "The CEO pose. We've been talking as a family, and we have an incredible opportunity. Here it comes," I thought. "The business has been doing well," he continued. "Very well. But we're ready for the next level. We want to expand into residential development. Luxury condos. High-end. There's a piece of land outside the city that's perfect. Waterfront. Incredible views." He reached under the table and pulled out a glossy folder. I almost smiled. It was the same playbook. The same shiny brochure full of renderings and buzzwords. He slid it across the table. The cover showed a glass tower rising from a hillside. The Alderman Residences was written in gold script. "Gorgeous, right?" Mom said. I picked the color scheme. "We've done the research," Morgan added. "The market is screaming for luxury waterfront." "It's going to be fire," Bryce said, still chewing. I opened the folder. I didn't look at the pretty pictures. I looked at the numbers printed in small font at the bottom. "This says $12 million in projected construction costs," I said. Dad nodded. "Ballpark. Could be less." "And you have the financing?" I asked. Dad cleared his throat. He glanced at Mom. She gave him a tiny nod. "Here's the thing, Cassie. Banks are slow. Bureaucratic. You know how it is. We have the bank ready to go, but they need to see a certain amount of cash up front. A show of good faith." He paused. He looked at me with an expression that was supposed to be warm. "We thought, instead of giving all that interest to some stranger, why not keep it in the family? We're offering you first dibs on the ground floor." "How much?" I asked. Dad's eyes locked onto mine. $2 million. $2 million. The table went quiet. Everyone was watching me. Mom was twisting her ring. Morgan was holding her breath. Even Bryce had stopped eating. It's an investment, Dad said quickly. Not a gift. You'd get a 15% return within 18 months. It's better than anything Wall Street will give you. And it's family, Mom said softly. She reached for my hand. Imagine it, Cassie. All of us, building something together. The alderman name on a building. Your father has dreamed of this for years. I looked at my mother's hand on mine. The same hand that never dialed my number for 14 months. The same hand that waved goodbye when I drove away from an empty porch with a warm bottle of champagne. $2 million, I said again. I closed the folder. I placed my hands on top of it. Before I answer, can I ask a few questions? Of course, Dad said. He smiled. He thought he had me. You said the bank is ready. Which bank? Pacific First, Dad said. We've been with them for 30 years, and the business is doing well. You said that. Better than ever. I reached into the pocket of my denim jacket. I pulled out my phone. I opened a document. I set the phone on the table so everyone could see the screen. That's interesting, I said. Because according to the county recorder's office, Pacific First filed a notice of default against Alderman and Sons 6 weeks ago. The silence that followed was different from the earlier silence. This silence had weight. It had teeth. That's a paperwork issue, Dad said. His smile was gone. We're resolving it. And according to your most recent tax filings, which are public record, I continued, scrolling, the company hasn't turned a profit in 27 months. You've lost 3 contracts. Your equipment is leased, not owned. And you have an outstanding debt of $1.8 million to a private lender in Henderson, Nevada, at 22% interest. Dad's face went from tan to white. Where did you get that? It's public information, Dad. Anyone can find it. You had no right, Morgan snapped. You went digging into our family's finances? That's disgusting. Our family's finances became my business the moment you asked me for $2 million, I said. I looked at Morgan. And since we're being transparent, Morgan, your name is on a $400,000 line of credit that's 90 days past due. You co-signed with Dad for a property deal in Bend. The deal collapsed. The debt didn't. Morgan's face went pale. She looked at Dad. Dad didn't look back. I turned to Bryce. And Bryce, your personal debt is $85,000. Credit cards, the BMW loan, and the DJ equipment that Dad put on his card. Which means it's actually Dad's debt. Bryce stared at me. His fork was frozen in midair. How do you know all this? He whispered. Because I do my homework, I said. Something this family never respected about me. I closed my phone. I looked at my father. You don't need $2 million for a condo development, Dad. You need $2 million to keep the lights on. The Nevada lender is coming for you next month. If they don't get paid, they take everything. The warehouse, the trucks, the tools. And since you used the house as collateral on the second mortgage, they can come for this too. I looked around the dining room. The chandelier, the china, the stone angel outside. All of this is borrowed, I said. Every single piece of it. Mom started crying. Not quiet tears. Loud, dramatic sobs. How can you say these things? She wailed. We are your parents. We raised you. We fed you. And you come into our home and humiliate us? You invited me here to ask for money, I said. I'm just making sure I understand what the money is actually for. You owe us, Dad said. His voice was low and dangerous. We put a roof over your head for 18 years. We sacrificed for you. You sacrificed nothing for me, I said. My voice was calm. I had a scholarship. I worked 2 jobs in college. When I asked you for $10,000 to file a patent, you said no. You said biotech was a scam. 6 months later, you gave Morgan $60,000 for a candle shop that lasted 5 months. That's different, Mom insisted. Morgan needed support. She was going through a hard time. I was sleeping on an air mattress in a lab, I said. I was eating ramen for every meal. I was going through a hard time, too. The difference is nobody noticed. The room erupted. Morgan called me jealous. Bryce called me cold. Dad slammed his fist on the table and told me I was ungrateful. Mom kept crying and saying she couldn't believe she raised such a heartless daughter. I let them scream. I let every insult land. Each one cut a string that had been holding me to them. With every cruel word, I felt lighter. When the noise died down, I spoke. I'm not giving you $2 million, I said. That's final. Then leave, Dad growled. Get out of my house. You are not welcome here. You're no daughter of mine. I've been no daughter of yours for a long time, Dad, I said. I just finally stopped pretending otherwise. I stood up. I picked up my jacket from the back of the chair. But before I go, I said, there's one more thing. I pulled out my phone. Priya, I said. Come in. The front door opened. Priya walked in wearing a charcoal suit and carrying a leather briefcase. She looked like she had just stepped out of a courtroom. She walked to the table without greeting anyone. She placed a thick blue document in the center, right between the fruit bowl and the butter dish. What the hell is this? Dad asked. I told you I wouldn't loan you money, I said. And I meant it. A loan requires trust. I don't trust you. But I am a businesswoman. And when I see a distressed asset with underlying value, I make a move. What are you talking about? Morgan asked. I contacted the lender in Henderson, Nevada, yesterday afternoon, I said. They were happy to talk. They told me your father had missed 4 payments. They told me they were preparing to seize assets next month. I offered to buy the note. Dad's breathing changed. It became shallow, fast. They sold it to me for 75 cents on the dollar, I continued. It was a deal, really. They thought you were going to default anyway. And this morning, while we were eating eggs Benedict, Priya finalized the acquisition of your Pacific First mortgage as well. I let that settle. I own your debt, Dad. All of it. I am your creditor. I own the lien on this house. I own the lien on the warehouse. I own the note on the company vehicles. I looked at Bryce's BMW keys sitting on the kitchen counter. I looked at Morgan's Range Rover through the window. I own the note on everything. Dad opened the blue folder. His hands were shaking. He read the first page. Then the second. His face lost all color. It turned gray, like wet cement. This can't be real, he whispered. It's real, Priya said. Every signature verified. Every transfer recorded. You bought our debt? Morgan said. Her voice was barely audible. To destroy us? To save the business, I said. But not for you. I nodded at Priya. She produced a second stack of documents. Here are the terms. Since you're in default on both obligations, I have the legal right to foreclose immediately. I could lock the warehouse tomorrow. I could put this house on the market by Friday. Mom let out a sound that wasn't quite a scream and wasn't quite a sob. It was the sound of a person watching their world crack in half. But I won't, I said, because unlike you, I don't throw people away when they're inconvenient. I slid a single sheet of paper across the table. I'm assuming full ownership of Alderman & Sons. The board is dissolved. All executive positions are terminated. I looked at Dad. You're retired. I looked at Morgan. You're out. Whatever consulting title Dad gave you, it's gone. And me? Bryce asked. He looked like a child who had just been told Santa wasn't real. You never actually worked there, Bryce, so nothing changes for you. I pointed to the blue folder. In exchange, I'm absorbing all company debt. Every penny. You walk away with no bankruptcy, no collections, no lawsuits, and I'm writing a check for $250,000 as a severance. For all of you to split. $250,000? Dad said. His voice was hollow. That's nothing. The land alone is worth. The land is leveraged to zero, Dad. You own nothing. This check is a gift. It's more than the equity is worth after the debt. You can't do this, Morgan said. She was standing now. Her fists were clenched. We'll fight it. We'll get a lawyer. You're welcome to try, Priya said coolly. But every document is clean. The transfers are irrevocable. And if you contest, the alternative is public foreclosure. Every detail in the county record. Every number in the paper. I knew what that meant to them. My parents had spent 40 years building a reputation in this town. Dad was on the Rotary Club board. Mom chaired the Garden Society. Their worst nightmare wasn't poverty. It was people knowing. The room went quiet for a long time. The eggs were cold. The orange juice was warm. The little swan napkins sat untouched, their wings drooping. Dad picked up the pen Priya had placed beside the documents. His hand trembled. He looked at my mother. She was staring at the tablecloth. Mascara ran down her cheeks in black rivers. She nodded. Almost invisible. But I saw it. Dad signed. Richard Alderman. His handwriting was shaky and small. Not the bold signature I had seen on birthday cards when I was a child. This was the handwriting of a man who had run out of road. Priya collected the documents. She stamped them. She placed copies on the table. "The transfer is effective immediately," she said. I stood up. I pulled on my denim jacket. I picked up my keys. "Cassandra," Dad said. "He used my full name. He never used my full name." "Wait." I stopped. I didn't turn around. We loved you," he said. "In our way." I stood there. I thought about the empty porch, the warm champagne, the pistachio cake I ate alone. I thought about the essay contest nobody came to, the phone calls nobody returned, the lab rat comment, the $10,000 he wouldn't spare. "You loved the idea of me," I said to the door. "The quiet one. The one who never complained. The one you could ignore because she never caused problems. But you didn't love me. You loved how easy I was to forget." I opened the front door, and I'm done being forgettable. I walked out into the morning air. It was cool and clean. The sky was pale blue. Birds were singing somewhere in the oak trees. I walked down the stone path past the fountain with the angel. The water was still trickling. I thought about how strange it was that water can look so peaceful while everything around it falls apart. I got into my Honda. The seat was cracked. The dashboard was dusty. The duct tape on the mirror was peeling. But it was mine. Every mile on that odometer was mine. I started the engine. It coughed, then caught. I pulled away from the curb. I didn't speed. I didn't look back. As I turned onto the main road, my phone buzzed. A text from Mom. "Cassie, please, come back. Let's talk about this. I'll make your father apologize. You're my baby girl. Please." Baby girl. She only ever called me that when she wanted something. I pulled into a parking lot. I sat there for a moment. Then I opened my contacts. Mom, block. Dad, block. Morgan, block. Bryce, block. 4 names, 4 taps. 14 months of silence from them. Now, permanent silence from me. I put the phone in my pocket. I pulled back onto the highway. The road stretched out in front of me, long and open. I thought about what I had left behind. A house full of people who only saw me when I was useful. A name that was supposed to mean loyalty but only ever meant obligation. I thought about what was ahead. My lab. My team of 63 people who believed in what we were building. A diagnostic test that could save thousands of women's lives. A company that existed because I refused to quit, even when every person at that brunch table told me I would fail. Revenge isn't about destruction. I know that now. Revenge is building a life so complete that the people who dismissed you become irrelevant. It's not about making them suffer. It's about realizing that their opinion of you was never the truth. It was just noise. And noise fades. I rolled down the window. The wind hit my face. It smelled like pine trees and rain. I turned on the radio. A song I loved was playing. I turned it up loud. I drove toward Seattle, toward my company, toward my life. In the rearview mirror, Portland got smaller and smaller until it disappeared completely. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel angry. I felt free. For the first time in 31 years, nobody was ignoring me, because I had finally stopped waiting to be seen. Have you ever had to walk away from the people who were supposed to love you the most? Tell me your story in the comments. And if this one hit close to home, hit that subscribe button and stick around. There are more stories like this coming. I'll see you in the next one.